Welcome, everybody. We are deeply honored today having Karol Marcela Escalante and our dear friend and partner, John Cano. This webinar starts the fall series of our monthly webinars of Bienvenidos. The webinar is dedicated to services providers who are serving our communities with children with disabilities and communities are all in Virginia. This webinar we will be talking about immigrant rights and resources, about legal protection services and support systems available to individuals with disabilities and their families in Fairfax County. For that, it's a real honor to introduce Karol Marcela Escalante, who is the director, and I'm going to read the bio because it's just a beautiful and amazing life of services that Karol has been doing back for about 15 years.
No.
Currently, she serves as the Director of Immigrant Community Affairs for Fairfax County, where she is part of one of the Fairfax team. Boasting over 15 years of professional experience, Ms. Escalante has a deep expertise in immigration, community engagement, public policy, diversity, inclusion, and strategic planning. What an honor, Karol, to have you here. In her current role, she's developing and implementing a comprehensive county-wide plan designed to make Fairfax County welcoming an inclusive community for immigrants, promoting successful integration and community well-being and economic prosperity. Prior to the position, she was a diplomat that included to be the General Counsel of Chicago, representing the Honduras government. And Ms. Escalante has a lot of a beautiful academic background. She holds a master's degree in strategic communication from George Mason University, an MFA in media design management from the International Academic and Design of Technology for Tampa, and bachelor degree from the National Autonomous University of Honduras. She is the mother of one of the most beautiful star. We have many hopes that Marcela, the girl, which is your daughter, will be one of the stars in equestrian sports in the future. We are hoping to have a next Olympic champion of this equestrian sports and your daughter, Karol. All the stage is yours.
Thank you so much for that, heartwarming introduction. I greatly appreciate it. And then hopefully, I have an 8-year-old. She's an equestrian. She loves riding horses. She loves doing sports. But most of all, I would like her to continue this path into supporting our community through sports, through horses, and making sure that we are making the difference. I think that's also that portion also runs in her veins.
And I'm not a big fan. I follow you and her through the social media. I'm one of the biggest fans.
Beautiful. Thank you so
And
much. I greatly appreciate. I follow you too.
share, Karol, what we are doing for our immigrants community from the Fairfax County standpoint to protect them and to promote well-being for them.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to introduce myself. So Rosalia provided a very nice introduction about me, but I want to explain a little bit about my role. So I'm part of the One Fairfax Central team. I am the Director of Immigrant Community Affairs in Fairfax County. I work with the various agencies to make sure that when we provide programs or services or develop any kind of initiative that our immigrant community is going to be able to access, we take in consideration the cultural competency. We take in consideration the language access, and that we are intentional when we are promoting those programs or services, or when we are in the thought process of what that project is going to be. And so I work with the 46 agencies within Fairfax County with special focus in the health and human services. Currently, because of different circumstances, this year we have been working really close with nonprofits to make sure that our immigrants understand what are the resources available in Fairfax County. I want to highlight that in Fairfax County, we want to provide the tools to everyone within our community to be able to thrive. Immigrants in Fairfax County are approximately 30% of the community. And with this said, I will say that they are a crucial part of the of why this county is the great county it is, right? And I include myself because immigrants, we are, we are wonderful. We are entrepreneurs. We create jobs. We are hardworking people. And that's why it's so important for us to be able to provide the tools to our community to be able to move up the ladder. And if our community is facing different challenges, we want to make sure that we are there to be able to overcome those challenges and identify ways to better support them. Because like our chairman says, we all do better when we all do better, right? If our immigrant community thrives, we all thrive. So last year we have been working for many years. I have been in this position since 2022, working with different agencies, working with different nonprofits that support immigrant communities, community leaders, faith leaders, so we can all work together into creating systems changing to support in a very intentional way immigrants in Fairfax County. Last year, we developed in partnership with key nonprofits, Fairfax County Public Schools, and other key agencies, different kind of seminars to make sure that our community understands what were their rights, what were the different resources available, and how they can access them without fear that the information they share with us is going to be disclosed with federal immigration enforcement. So we roll out successfully different kind of programs, and I have my colleague John Cano from Legal Aid Justice Center, who was also part of these great sessions that we developed towards the end of last year, and we continue to do at the beginning of this year. So this year, additionally to those events, we put together a group that I am part of, and we have the chair of our group, John Cano, here in this call as well. That is the Immigrant Support Network. So why is it important? Why is this group so important? So this group is crucial in Fairfax County because it helps foster an inclusive and equitable community by addressing the unique challenges immigrants face. Like I said before, with nearly 30% of the county population being foreign born, the network plays a vital role in connecting residents to essential resources, language assistance, employment support, educational opportunities. By supporting immigrants' integration and well-being, the network not only empowers individuals and families, but also strengthens the local economy and enhances the county's reach and cultural diversity. This ensures that all residents have a fair chance to thrive and contribute to the community. So what we do within our group is that we get together originally. Our main purpose was to be able to understand, what was working in one area of the county and what were some challenges maybe, happening in the other side of the county, and come together. And that way, if that same challenge is presented to another nonprofit, they're able to learn from this good practice and say, these are the tools that we utilize to be able to overcome this challenge. Or even if it's a good practice that we're saying, this has been a great strategy for community engagement, or to be able to connect with, just to give you an example, with the Mayan indigenous community or with the Middle Eastern communities, what were those practices that were utilized? And then that way we share these good practices, and we're able to be intentional into getting to these communities. And we set up an agenda with our great steering committee. We have a very diverse group of professional individuals that are part of the steering committee. We have John Cano from Legal Aid Justice Center. We have Marcia Tuoni from MCCP. We have soon we're gonna have someone from the organization Daryl Hishra also present in our steering committee. We have Luisa Aguilar from the nonprofit organization CASA. And we also have Samantha Saboli from Centerville Immigration Forum. So we know that our immigrant community in Fairfax County, it's very diverse. And we know that the strategies to be able to support our immigrant community is not just one strategy fits all. So we need to tailor our the way we connect with them, the way we identify what are those challenges and needs, and making sure that we are. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention Song Yoon from Hamke Center, representing the Asian community within Fairfax County. Um, that we are able to understand, okay, what are the most common fears that are our Hispanic community is facing? What are those and how can we address those? Or what is the best effective way to share a toolkit related to like know your rights, or a toolkit related to what are the main resources that are available through Fairfax County Public Schools? And I'm just giving examples here. And then make sure that we understand if it's through the faith leaders, if it's through, our liaisons, if it's through our nonprofits that provide legal aid assistance. And then overall, making sure that we understand what are the needs and how can we help them better address those needs. And then utilizing those effective channels of communications to get to those communities, right? Because the only way, if we really want to be intentional, we need to make sure that we understand how can we connect with them. We know that there are high levels of fear and uncertainty currently, and we need to make sure that our community feels that they can trust us. Our community feel that they can, share with us what are those fears, what are those needs, and that they're able to access these programs or services that they are, as Fairfax County residents, entitled to be able to, regardless of their citizenship or immigration status, entitled to be able to access them, and make sure they know that. And for example, the other day I was talking in an event celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. By the way, happy Hispanic Heritage Month, uh, with someone from the police department in the Coolmore area, and all the great efforts they're putting together to make sure that they understand that Fairfax County Police Department does not work or does not collaborate with any immigration enforcement procedures. And the main purpose of this agency is to provide security, like the fire department. So our community members need to feel safe to call the 911 if they are in a position where they feel they are not secure. And so making sure that our community feels that they belong here, because we all do. As an immigrant myself, I feel proud to work in a county and live in a county that highlights or that recognizes the contributions of immigrants in Fairfax County. And with this said, I know this was a lot of information, but I'm going to hand it over to Rosalia or to John Cano if he wants to expand a little bit more about the group.
I just want to make a comment and question at the same time. We are doing this, and the monthly webinars and the webinars in Spanish, which is not going to happen today for families. And I need to acknowledge it is the time of this is the time for the Virginia Board of People with Disabilities, who are the agency who provide us the funding to be able to transmit this webinars and conferences and empower the families, the Latino, in this case, particularly the Latino families across the state. Thanks to them, we have been able to create this network of organizadores through the state, Richmond, Harrisonburg, Roanoke, and transmit the power of the protections for people with disabilities. And that's my comment. And also, and you can see the disclaimer that said that the funding for this is coming from the Virginia Board of People with Disabilities, which is we are always thanks them for giving the chance and opportunity to have people like you, partners like you, Karol and John, sharing this information for our communities. And I can say Life Independence Center is life testimony of the compromise of Fairfax County and represented by Karol Escalante. And there's so many health fairs that we were participating, serving people with disabilities with the vaccines when we were doing this full campaign, and we worked together mano a mano, hombro a hombro, hands by hand, shoulder by shoulder, to provide services to the community with disabilities in Fairfax County. That will be my next question. Will be those beautiful services that you described that we all know are also available for people with disabilities?
Yes, within Fairfax County, we have actually a specific, board or a section that takes in consideration people with disabilities and senior citizens. And we recently had I was part of a conversation where what is if you have a disability, you're a senior citizen, and then you are also part of the minority, and you're not able to, maybe the services are there or access or
Exactly.
understand, the big umbrella of how things work. And I would greatly appreciate the work you guys do, because sometimes, and I'm gonna, share like a lived experience. Like, I was born and raised in Honduras. I moved in here when I was like probably like 22, 23 years old. So when I first got here, my thought process is how things work in my home country. And I
Exactly.
know that many of our community members think, okay, maybe in many of our countries, the resources for people of disabilities or, senior citizens are very limited.
Limited.
And then, or sometimes because of the citizenship or immigration status, they think, oh, I might not qualify to be able to access those programs or services. So I think the most important tool right now is information. Like I always tell our community, partners, community leaders, information is power. Right now, what we need to do is make sure that we become experts on navigating the system, that it can be overwhelming because it's a lot of information. But let's start one area at a time. And thank you so much, Cherry, for including in the chat the Immigrants and Fairfax website. Here you can find different kind of like resources by area. And there's actually one pager that we created with the steering committee, which includes resources available for immigrants in Fairfax County, in relation to, different key topics. But I think the work that you guys do into supporting our community, it's so, so important, because sometimes people don't even know where to start. So then that way, for you to be able to give them that door, open that window to opportunity, so they can understand that there is uh, there are resources and there are ways to make sure that if you have a child or someone in your family that has disabilities, there are options to be able to support them, and making sure that they are integrated into, the regular life of, well, the community, and
Mainstream.
be able to
Yes.
eventually, thrive and succeed. Because sometimes we can have a limitation, but then, thrive in other sections and be brilliant in other sections. So making sure that we're providing those tools out to these communities. And I also wanted to share through our immigrants in Fairfax, I mean, through our immigrant support network, we do like a little roundup. We know that there has been many questions regarding the, education, people with disabilities, what's happening in the federal government, what's happening in the state government. And now I'm talking about someone who is part of the Immigrant Support Network, right, as a community leader as well. Because it can be overwhelming. During this group, during our sessions, our legal expert, John Cano, provides an overview of these are the repercussions. So this is what's happening in, at the federal level. This is what happened at the state level, right? In a way where we can digest it, because we know that sometimes there's a lot of information, and then it's difficult for us to digest. And many community members with high levels of fear are this resource is not going to be available anymore, and so many questions. But thank you, Rosalia, for everything you guys do and all your team.
No, thank you. And as I said, we can never do nothing without this wonderful community of partners of Fairfax County government and agencies that have been able to help us to achieve our goals of serve people with disabilities and their families in so many ways, including all, not only the Latino, and I want to be very clear about that, we were able to reach so many communities, and it was because our partnership with the Fairfax County Health Department and our commit to serve not only this Latino community, but all. And it was a very success. We have been able to get a lot of success serving all. And I was not able to achieve that goal, but because my partnership with all of you who were always supporting me and invited me to all the events, creating spaces for Independent Center to be able to deliver the services and deliver the messages that are not only for the mainstream communities, but for this beautiful community of immigrants and diverse people who lives in Fairfax County. I do not have any more questions for you, Carol. I understand that you have another commitment and you need to leave us, but thank you so very much for giving this, I will say, hope that we have hope in where we live. We have hope in our leadership, and you are part of the leadership of Fairfax County, and you are part of this amazing network that you have been created with John and Centerville Community Forum and Aguilar. I can from Casa.
Casa, Hamke, Hamka
Yeah,
Center.
exactly.
Yeah.
All this that's what it is, all together with only with so many goals, but only one is provide quality of life for everybody. Because for health, for education, we just equal under the system of the Fairfax County, and our families feel that. And I always have someone I always call, and I always have someone who is really willing to help me to direct and navigate with our families looking for services and resources from Fairfax County. Thank you, Carol, for being with us. And now I'm going to take the lead to pass the torch to Jimena, who will represent our dear friend and partner, John Cano.
Thank you so much, Carol. It was so nice to see you today and hear all that information. It's amazing, and of course, your job is well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
And let me talk to you a little bit about John Cano, who is our next speaker. John Cano is a Ferrum College graduate holding a BA in political services and political science and Spanish, who joined LAJC in August 2020. 2022. John has over 6 years of experience organizing in immigrant logistic and workers' rights, including coordinating statewide and local response drive privilege cards, who was amazing work for all the Latino communities in
All communities.
in all our communities, yeah, and including coordinating, eliminating the 285G in Prince William County and working alongside impacted members to analyze the impact of wage theft in Northern Virginia. During his free time, John joins spending time with his puppy. He plays soccer, basketball, tennis, and he loved to watch his favorite sport teams, Manchester City. Bernie, okay. Bernie is famous in the Latino community. And also, I believe, I want to say it, he's a role model in our community. Thank you so much for all what you're doing, John, and it's amazing. Honestly, we love the work that you are doing.
Bienvenido.
Bienvenido.
Legal Aid Justice Center, what I used to be my old home. And I will have so many questions, but I'm not going to harass you with so many questions. Just tell us about what is new, what is current in protection for legal protection for immigrants that include people with disabilities, John.
Yeah, thank you, Rosalia. Thank you, everyone, for this amazing and warm presentation. It's an honor to be amongst powerful women, doing the good work and always uplifting our communities and showing how collective power unity makes a difference. Yeah, I'm with the Legal Aid Justice Center. So a special shout out to Karol as well for doing all the amazing work and ensuring that county Fairfax County remains true to one Fairfax and being welcoming to all. We know that we are richer with our immigrant siblings, and we are continue to be uplifted and recognize the strength and being such a strong, diverse county and a commonwealth. So yeah, I want to talk a little bit about some updates of what has happened at the federal level and what does that means with implications here in Virginia. And then, well, how can we still provide support for our communities despite everything that's happening? Um, and I also want to share some good news, right, where we have managed to push back. So not everything is, gloom and dark. But I'm happy to start with some federal updates that aren't too positive, and then I'll go into the positive. So just in the last 3 weeks, we have seen several decisions that would harm our immigrant siblings. 3 weeks ago, the Board of Immigration's Appeal, known as BIA, had a decision where it changed how folks who are in immigration proceedings, if they're eligible to be released. In other words, if they're eligible to be released from detention. So previously, folks who were considered to be released and being able to fight their case instead of being detained, they would have to meet three categories. First category, that they were not a danger to the community. The second was their family ties and the implications of them being detained. And then third, ensuring that they would return back to all court hearings relating to the immigration case. And this was a discretion giving directly to immigration judges. Now, yeah, 3 weeks ago, the Board of Immigration Appeals changed that and said that not all folks are eligible for bond. And this is a heavy burden that has impacted our communities because what they've changed is if folks entered the country without inspection, those individuals will no longer be eligible for bond, which means that a lot of folks would have to be in detention centers fighting their case. This is a big difference and change in policy and practice, as many folks will no longer be eligible for bond. I know that's very difficult to hear, but there's also other tactics where folks can still be able to fight their cases and not being in detention. As we have heard in several cases that have made national headlines, for example, Kilmar Abrego, with the main discussion being habeas corpus and the illegal detention of what the government was doing. That's also something that is being looked at with folks who aren't eligible for bond. So despite for us, for example, as Legal Aid Justice Center, doing a lot of removal defense work, we have pivoted to now also do bond and habeas corpus cases, which habeas means with habeas corpus cases and fighting them is fighting and ensuring that clients or community members aren't illegally detained. So despite a lot of these rulings that have happened recently, several legal organizations, immigrant right organizations, are currently exploring other ways to continue to defend our communities. So that's one unfortunate change that has come down from the BIA. Another change that I know many of us have been following closely was the shadow dockets that the Supreme Court of the United States were listening relating to one of the lower courts in California putting a TR, temporary restraining order, on ICE and racial profiling folks that look like they're from Latino descent, speak Spanish. What the Supreme Court ruled, or a decision that we just heard from Judge Kavanaugh, is that ICE is allowed to question and folks that may look like they're from Latino descent, that they speak Spanish, are congregated in certain areas that are highly migrated by day laborers, such as car washes, Home Depots, to question them about their immigration status. Certain areas that are now, this creates obviously a very dangerous precedent where it allows openly racial profiling because of the way one looks, the way one speaks, or the way one is just simply shopping around. Um, as I mentioned, this is regarding California, and what ICE was doing in California. But the dangers about this is that this type of precedent can enable other law enforcement agencies or other states to have this practice of racial profiling. So that's something that is dangerous, that has happened as well. This took place after the BIA decision, so 2 weeks ago. Um, but it's still something that we're closely monitoring. And of course, that's something at the federal level. We got to remember that immigration is a federal level issue, but there's also differences when it comes to, of course, state and local, where we know that federal agents, especially with ICE, don't have all the manpower. They're trying to make changes for that with the bill that was dubbed the Big Beautiful Bill. Um, but now I want to pivot a little bit on what is happening in Virginia. Actually, what good wins we have had so far, despite all these negative news we received. Um, so I do want to say that there was also a ruling that was against the administration on ICE enforcement, where earlier this year, the administration triggered the Aliens Enemies Act, where they were using that to deport a lot of our Venezuelan immigrant siblings under that. So there was a ruling recently. There's been so many rulings, so I can't recall when this took place, where they said that the administration and ICE cannot use the Aliens Enemies Act to deport Venezuelans, as that is not the case, that there is an invasion going on in the United States. Earlier this year, there was also a win in certain jurisdictions. It didn't take place in Virginia, where there is protections in places for churches, where ICE cannot enter churches in certain areas, and this was all related to the lawsuits that the Quakers Church put against the administration. So we have seen that there are some wins that has taken place at the federal level, and then at the state level across the country. There's been several wins as well. And that's important to know, that despite what happens at the federal level, there can be real changes happening at the state and local level. So for example, at states, we have seen, just across the river in Maryland, they have passed legislation that would establish sensitive locations, which would protect a lot of immigrants and families that have mixed status to be protected, whether in churches, schools, and hospitals. We've seen in Oregon where they have expanded the eligibility for a special visa for youth called the Special Immigrant Juvenile Visa. And that visa is a special visa designated to a child that has been abandoned or neglected by one or two parents. And something important to note, what Oregon did is that they matched it with federal law. Most states, they age children at 18. When it comes to immigration and the special immigrant juvenile visa, it expands the eligibility to 21. So let's say if the child was abandoned or neglected before turning 18, or if they're going to age out, they're allowed up to the age of 21. Um, so there's have been some wins happening at the state and local level. Also happy to mention in Virginia that there's also some good wins happening right now where we've seen localities, as Karol has mentioned, making support groups and ensuring that resources are fully accessible to all community members and providing workshops. We've seen that several communities are getting ready for the upcoming General Assembly to pass not just pro-immigrant, but pro-everyone bills. So, for example, reintroducing what is called anti-rent gouging, which would put a cap on rent increases. We have seen and gained momentum for funding for English language learners. So that these are just some ways that we can continue to make wins, also pushing back what has happened in Virginia, the inhumane conditions that took place at the ICE Chantilly field office, where there was a demand letter that took place, where what they were doing is holding people, having them sleep around toilets, very inhumane conditions. So we've seen wins where when communities use their voice and report, that we can still push back. So those are some things that have happened that we can make changes in Virginia. And I also want to share some resources that we can provide to folks that can be shared widely in Virginia as things have been rapidly changing. So I did put in the chat, which I'm not sure everyone can see, some information for a rapid response hotline. If I could kindly share my screen, I would like to share a presentation. The immigrant community with what we've seen an increase in ICE enforcement in Virginia. Not just ICE, but we've seen some police in other areas in the Commonwealth collaborating with ICE. So this is a tool where folks can report. This campaign is led by and for immigrant communities with the goal to expose the activities of ICE or police that are working with ICE, share their tactics, and use this information where we can push for changes to protect our immigrant brothers and sisters. Who is part of Poder Virginia? It's made up of Dreamers, Mothers in Action, Centerville Immigration Forum, and the Legal Aid Justice Center. So that's who comprises Poder Virginia. Many of us are very familiar with these organizations, been in the space of immigrant rights for years. You might be asking yourself, well, what are the goals of the campaign? One, to provide lifeline support to immigrants, communities during immigration enforcement, and connect them to legal resources. And then in some instances, providing legal representation for bond. So if folks call into this hotline, if they're having an interaction with ICE, they can call this number and they'll get real life time support of what their rights are, depending on different scenarios. If ICE is at the house, if ICE is at work, in a public space, or in your car. Another goal of this campaign is to collect data and enforcement activities in the state of Virginia. Because it could be the way ICE is moving in Northern Virginia is completely different from what they're doing in Virginia Beach or in Southwest Virginia. And we want to ensure that all communities know what is happening in those areas. And the goal is to use aggregate data that we collect to advance pro-immigrant policies and then have campaigns of accountability and litigation. Because we recognize that immigration, even though it's targeting immigrant communities, it affects the whole community as a whole. It affects schools, It affects churches, healthcare providers. So for us, the community is not just our immigrant siblings, but we recognize the chilling effects that it has at the local level. Also providing and developing training materials such as Know Your Rights and popular education based on info that we're receiving through the hotline. As I mentioned, the hotline is a tool for the community to report, activities of ICE and receive that lifeline support in connection to legal resources and possible representation in case of deportation. This is the hotline for Poder, Virginia. It operates from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. Folks that are operating the hotline have been trained on sharing Know Your Rights materials. They're consistently being updated to ensure that they're not practicing law, but instead of sharing legal information. This hotline is for folks to call in Spanish or English. And this is the number that can be shared. Please take a picture. The front side is the hotline number, and on the back is just the reminders of our constitutional rights that we have under the Fourth and Fifth Amendment. Don't open the door, don't sign no document, and you have the right to remain silent. So you might be asking yourself, well, what does the hotline do and what does the hotline not do? So what do? We provide legal resources. So we can provide them referrals to private attorneys, nonprofits. We provide them support on the spot of their rights when interacting with ICE and document and detail the call. So we have a good idea of like what has happened to then pass that along to the organization that does the screening and possible representation. What does this hotline not do? We don't verify enforcement activity, which means if someone calls our line, we won't dispatch someone to verify. The reason being is many times when someone reports that ICE is there, by the time folks have been dispatched, ICE is no longer there. And our role is to provide lifeline support. But there are other organizations that do verification. And of course, it's always a good to report those type of activities. We don't share enforcement activities in details with people. So we won't say exactly like who was detained, identifiable markers, or like it took place in X neighborhood. We would just share aggregate data. Like there was arrests in Fairfax County, specifically in this zip code, but we won't share identifying information. Another thing is we won't allow folks that call us suffer in silence, meaning that we would provide support and ensuring and connecting them to resources. So that's something that we want to ensure that we don't have our community members suffer in silence. And I think that was it for my presentation.
It was a wonderful, wonderful resource. We are really happy to be able to share to the community that include families whose members have a disability. This wonderful Poder Virginia now coalition that will inform and protect our communities and their immigration rights. I see Sherry Takemoto has a question.
Thank you, John, for all the work you're doing. You must be exhausted. Our hearts go out to what you're doing. This question is not necessarily related to the enforcement actions, but it's related to the folks who are spending thousands of dollars on attorneys so that they can shore up their legal status. Is there a way to check for whether or not they're getting the right legal advice, like a second opinion that Legal Aid Justice Center has, or do you have any resources for that? Because of course, we don't provide any legal information, but sometimes I feel like the people that are talking to us about what their lawyers are doing don't sound like it's quite right. So can people who are paying their lawyers call to just say, hey, this is what my lawyer's telling me. Is it correct?
Yeah, thank you, Cherry, for that question. So community members always have the option to end any agreement that they have with the attorney representing them. Now, can a community member who currently has legal representation call another attorney to ask, hey, what my attorney said, is this right? So unfortunately, with the ethical duties of attorneys and their ethical obligations, they cannot provide legal advice to community members who have retained an attorney. But I will say what can happen is that attorneys can say, well, these are your rights as a client. You have the right to terminate the contract with your attorney. You have the right to request all paperwork relating to your case. You have the right to request all payment documents of your case. So it's a very slippery slope when someone has retained legal representation. But something that to consider is, um, and I can share this via email, is sharing listservs or lists of attorneys that are credible. We have a list of private attorneys in the area. We have lists of nonprofit attorneys, and there's also AILA, which is the American Immigration Legal Association, which they keep a list of attorneys that are updated and who are in good standing. Um, so that's the tricky situation, but I'm happy to share those resources. But they do have rights to cease the contract if they don't feel comfortable, especially if they have felt harassed as well.
Thank you. And then on a happy note, I heard that the Fairfax Bar Association is providing pro bono services for folks who have been detained. So I'm asking for that information from the person who shared it with me, and we will share it with folks.
I just was saying that thank you so very much, always, John, for helping us to be updated with good news. Not all are bad news, but and we take which is good. It's always a little bit of relief for the families that include members who have the disability, and we love to be be able to deliver those good news through Legal Aid Justice Center and of course through you who are always willing to share and lift us in terms of this momentum. But we always have a hope with the Legal Aid Justice Center, with the Poder Virginia, which is, I feel so proud that, okay, here in our webinar, we are fresh on the news that we have Poder, which is a congregation of agencies and nonprofits who are helping our community to have opportunities to remain here in the country. Before we closing, I want to invite you, John, and everybody who is listening and watching you for our next webinar in Espanol that will be next Wednesday, the September 24th at 7 p.m. And the webinar will be joined by Wilber Valderrama, which is not less famous than you, John Cano. We are more loved, of course, I promise that. But we will have Wilmer Valderrama, and the webinar is Empoderando la Comunidad, Guía de Derechos y Recursos para Personas con Discapacidad, a guide to disability rights and resources. That webinar will be in Spanish and will be by 5 national organizations that include Independent Center, talking about their rights, talking about the rights to vote for communities with disabilities, talk about accessibility, and of course, Wilmer, who is one of the co-founders of Voto Latino, who will be kind of empowering communities around the country. This is a national webinar in Espanol, and I will say that focus on disability rights, but I will say it always apply. Disability rights is always a civil right and applies to everybody. I hope you can join us. Please, if you can share with your networks. We are sharing now that can you see this is the official flyer, and I hope you can help us to disseminate the information about this wonderful webinar in Espanol, in Spanish, that will be empowering communities around the country on disability rights. And again, that includes the right for people with disabilities to vote. I think we are getting to the end. Again, thank you, Karol, for helping us to help the Latino families around the state with these wonderful resources, and more especially, John, to always provide hope. We need hope. We need to be hopeful, and you are always delivering in some way or another hope for us, for our communities. Thank you so very much for always be on the loop of us in our calls. And I guess now this is not going to be the only one. We will keep bothering you. Be aware. Muchísimas gracias, John, por estar con nosotros, por siempre atender nuestro llamado. El survey está ya en la...
Ya está publicado. It's already published, so please help us to
We have
answer those
that is
easy
very
questions.
important for us, because that survey goes to our founders, or to people who provides the funding, and they can see that we really were doing this, and they can see that the information presented was really giving an impact through the information that John and Karol were presenting in this wonderful afternoon. It is, can we close now? It's on air.
Yeah, we're still streaming, and please make sure everyone follows the ECNV official page in Facebook, YouTube. You will get all this wonderful information and important information for our community, for everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you, Ms. Sherry. Thank you, John. Thank you, interpreters.
Thank you, interpreter.